Hello and welcome to another Monday night episode of Let's Talk Rangers. I'm Kyle McLean and as always I'm joined by regular co-host Ross Chalmers. If you're new to the channel, thanks very much for joining us, and if you're tuning in again, thanks very much for sticking with us and continue to support the show. We'll start tonight with a couple of talking points about Annan. We'll get into the game. I suppose it was a comfortable, professional performance, I suppose, with a few talking points there. 3 new signings were unveiled before kickoff. Ross, I won't confirm or deny that we missed the first of those 2 signings because somebody was eating a pie in the concourse, but at least we got to see Skov Olsen getting announced. But once the football started, I think it was about as straightforward as it gets. 5-0 win, Scott Fry, a genius, because he got that Rothwell assist, a Dowell goal, a peach of a free kick from Aasgaard, which I'm sure we'll talk about, a Miovski hat-trick, plenty of positives, plenty of rotations, and the main talking point is Clinton Insiala's got a new hairdo. But Ross, what was your overall thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I think, again, it's one of those ones where you're going to Ibrox on a Friday night and you're wanting it to be as professional a performance as possible. I think we have a bit of the fear at the moment when it comes to these type of ties based on last season. And that was a really difficult day against Queen's Park. And I think as a supporter now, we don't really underestimate any side coming to Ibrox because we've seen what can happen if you underestimate anyone. So yeah, turning up at Ibrox on Friday night, it was hoping for a professional performance. I thought it was going to be a rotated side, and that is exactly what we've seen. And yeah, I was actually really happy. I thought at times Rangers actually played some really good football. I thought the first 10 minutes, Annan actually done well to settle into the game. But I think after that, yeah, we showed a lot of good stuff, and fair play to some of those players coming in that haven't had a lot of minutes this season, not a lot of football. Players in there like Joe Rothwell that I never thought I would see again in a Rangers shirt, and he appeared on Friday night. So look, they were as professional as they could be. They came in, they scored 5 goals. We can't really complain. I think it maybe comes to the floor again in terms of there's a lot of players in there that I think have to be moved on in this window. I think when you looked at that lineup, you're like, wow, there's lots of players in there I actually completely forgot about that were still in amongst this squad. But like I said, fair play to them. They turned up, professional performance. You referenced it there in your opening in sequence about Miovski grabbing a hat-trick. I'm hoping that's really positive for him moving forward and he can use that in the league. And of course, that Thelo Aasgaard free kick kind of signed everything off, it? It was a wonderful free kick. So yeah, happy with the result. Kyle, we keep the momentum going. I know it's the Scottish Cup, it's a different competition, but I think that's Rangers' 6th win in a row under Danny Röhl. So there is momentum there. His comments after the press conference are really encouraging as well, where he's really starting to see a team now, togetherness, and that drive and determination from the squad. And I think that's something we've been lacking at times. So yeah, overall, really happy about it, and we're into the next round of the Scottish Cup.
Yeah, it's the bare minimal that you should expect from a Rangers team, but it's something we weren't getting at the start of the season. It's nice to see that even when Danny Röhl does make so many rotations, the same effort is still there, the same desire is still there. A lot of these players, and even in the previous couple of seasons, you could not have leveled that at them. But the one thing the word that I love that I keep saying on this podcast, Ross, is it was routine. It just had that routine feeling about it. We've not had that. Look, one of those players, he was awarded man of the match in the stadium. I suppose that it was hard to argue with this given that he had scored a hat-trick. But I just want to talk about Bojan Miovski. I mean, again, we know the level of opposition he's up against. It was Annan, but he scored a couple of really good goals. His Rangers career's just not quite kicked off. He's definitely the sort of second striker behind Chermiti at the minute, which again, something I did not think I would be saying at the start of the season. Is that I'm asking you this, Ross, because it's something that a lot of people on here have been talking about is Rangers. Do we need to go out and get a new striker, or is this, can Bojan Miovski, build on the fact that he's got a hat-trick in this game?
My opinion changes on this all the time, Kel, to be honest with you. I think coming into January, I felt that Rangers had to go out and strengthen up front. They had to bring in a striker. I think at that point, before we went to Parkhead, Chermiti was still, he was starting to improve, but he was struggling overall, and he hadn't really found the goals yet. And Miovski, I think, was in a very similar position. I think Danilo's even further down the chain, to be honest with you. I think what's best for Danilo now is probably moving on, and maybe we'll get to that in the rest of the podcast. But I think for me, Miovski, I get frustrated with Miovski, and I think we spoke about this on several podcasts because I was expecting a lot more from him. I really thought that Miovski was going to be Rangers' first choice striker this year, and it just hasn't materialised at all. I think you seen the other night, he does have some good movement and he gets into the right area. And when you get him in these positions, he will score goals. So I'm conflicted on it because I think he's not really had lots of opportunities to score goals in this Rangers side. I think I referenced it on the podcast the other night about the low XG that our strikers have, and that is true. Maybe he boosted that the other night, especially with his penalty. But overall, they don't get lots of chances, our strikers. So I feel from in that, if I was being greedy, I still think Rangers need something in that area. I do feel, like I said, I do feel sorry for them. I don't think they're having a lot of chances created for them. And as a striker, you're only as good as your teammates, right? You need your teammates to create chances for you and put you in goal scoring positions. But at the same time, am I completely confident with all three of those going into the rest of the season that are going to deliver in the big moments? I'm not sure. So credit to Miovski. All he can do in these type of games when he's coming in and you're playing as your second choice at the moment, all he can do is come in and score goals, right? And he done that the other night. So I can't fault him. I know the opposition is Annan and it's a League Two side, but he comes in and he scores a hat-trick. He takes all three of those goals really well. And I think that's what I said at the beginning. I'm just hoping he kind of uses this as about momentum now, because he did get those 2 goals against Kilmarnock and then he kind of fell away again. I know he picked up an injury. He scored that goal away against Ferencváros, but he's just never really kicked on after that. So I think for me, Rangers probably still need to look at that area. I'm not sure if it will be the priority for the club, but I do think they would give themselves a much better chance of success at the end of the season if they can go into the market. But Miovski overall, I still want to see a little bit more for him. I still don't feel he gets involved enough in the game at times. You get him into positions, he will score goals. But again, as a striker, you need to be involved. Like, you need to do a little bit more. And I think that's where my frustration comes with him.
Do you think a guy like Skov Olsen coming in, and I'll be name dropping him throughout this show, do you think when he, because that was one of the things in his interview that when he came out, and I loved it when he said this, I get my head up and I look for my mates in the box. I was sitting thinking, I think Miovski might be one of the, like, an ideal striker that you want in that box, because some of those finishes, again, we know the level of opposition, but they're really, he is very good in that penalty box when the ball comes to him. Do you think Skov Olsen coming in will, help him a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why I've said that for a while now, that I think the big thing for Rangers in this transfer window has been creativity. And you have to go out and find creativity. And that can be in several different areas in the park. It could be central midfield. It can be the type of wingers with Skov Olsen and the likes of Kasama on the other side and a Mikey Moore, for example. Or it could be a striker that is maybe more of a hold-up player and a link-up player that can bring others into the game. I just think Rangers have to address that overall. So yeah, I completely agree with you. I think Andrew Skov Olsen can make a big difference here. I think someone with that kind of pedigree, the ability to get numbers is there. That's the type of player you're signing. You're signing an experienced player that has done this at the highest level in terms of European competition. He's shown that he can he can return numbers at a really high rate. I think it will help the likes of Miovski, and it will help the likes of Thelo if he can get game time in Chermiti as well. That's why I do defend the strikers a little bit, because I don't think they've had a lot to work with, even though I want to see more from them. I think you can only really judge them properly once you're creating lots of chances for them and you see how they react to that. And I think what we've seen from Miovski so far, I'm quietly confident that if we can start creating more chances for him from open play, he will rack up the goals, because I think you've seen that the other night. His first goal was really well taken, where it's broken the box and he just shifts it back onto his left foot and he finishes. Like, it's a really good goal. The second one as well, I think you have to give a lot of credit to Finlay Curtis, because he picks him out fantastically. It's a great ball to the back post. But again, as a striker, that's what I want. That's what I want my striker. I want him in between the posts. Do you know what I mean? You want him to sniff out chances in and around that area. And that is exactly what he does. And again, penalty really well taken. So yeah, I do think the likes of a Skov Olsen come in can really help him. I do still want to see a wee bit more from him, because I expected more from him based on his time at Aberdeen. I thought he looked a really top striker at Aberdeen, and we just haven't maybe seen enough of that so far. But yeah, certainly I think that more players coming in during this window with a little more creativity in the higher end of the park in the final third can definitely help him.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to those cutbacks from the byline and the Miovski tap-ins from now on. But yeah, look, the next point I want to move on to, Ross, we saw another debutant. You are laughing at me because you know what, I get very 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 excited about these things, and he's, Chukwuani was just on the pitch, looked like a very physically imposing figure. I think he came on the same time as Aasgaard. We both know Asgard's physically quite big as well, and Chukwuani looked a bit bigger than him. But he came on that pitch, and I loved it straight away. He was on, and his head turning from side to side. He was scanning the whole field, and you're like, you're looking into that too much. But I get only a very brief glimpse, Ross, but I was very impressed with what I saw from him. Nice 1-2 touch stuff, kept the ball moving, was quite tidy in the midfield. And I especially loved that in his post match interview, he said when he was asked, where do you see yourself playing? Are you a 6? Are you an 8? And he's just like, I'm just a midfielder. I'll play wherever the manager wants me to play, and I'll do that job well. I love that type of confidence from a player that's just through the door.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's the type of midfielder we need, don't we? We need someone that can kind of do a little bit of everything, box to box, and I think that's probably what he's bringing in. I agree with you. I think what I really, again, I think we've all known this with the type of player we're signing back. You could see the physical stature straight away. I thought when Rangers brought both Thelo Aasgaard and Tochi Chukwuani off the bench the other night, you could see the difference straight away in terms of big midfielders, and it's something we spoke about in terms of Danny Röhl. It's obvious what he's going for here. It's obvious the type of side he's trying to build. He's wanting to go with a lot more physicality in there, and that's fine if he's identified that as the way of winning this league title or making Rangers a lot stronger within this league. Then that's okay. I'm absolutely all for that. But overall, yeah, I think of course you have to take into consideration the opposition in Annan. And I think at the time of the game he was coming on, I think Rangers were 3-0 up at that point. So you're probably expecting them to go on and coast it a little bit. But from what I've seen, yeah, quietly impressed. I think obviously there's a lot more to come from him. And I think you're going to see that next week against Dundee at home. That's likely, I would imagine he'll probably start that game because there's no Connor Barron at the moment. So I think you're going to see a lot more from him. But yeah, tidy, looks composed in possession. He covered the ground really well as well, I thought as well, and he just snuffed anything out that Annan potentially could break and things. So yeah, I'm really excited about this signing actually. I think he's someone that can actually make a difference now. I've read a little bit more into him. Do I still think the Rangers need something else in there? Absolutely. But I think you've brought in a good player that could potentially help us. And look, I think we've discussed it several times now. The club are clearly going out there and trying to give Danny Röhl as much competition within that squad as physically possible, and they've done that. So yeah, absolutely. I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, I just like the fact he came on the pitch and within 2 minutes, people that he's maybe only had a couple of training sessions with before, he's already telling them what to do, telling people to get forward. And I really like the look of him. Again, I know it was only a brief glimpse, but you can only go in the wee taste you've had. But listen, the other guy that I want to talk about, he came on with Chukwuani at the same time, and that was Thelo Aasgaard. I don't think either of us will ever see a better free kick than that at Ibrox. I've watched that back see that angle from behind where it just sinks perfectly into that top left hand corner of the goal. But listen, he's a guy we've talked about, Ross. I feel like every now and again I put a tweet out by going, you know, um, Asgard, he has to show up in this game. I've not been doing it as much recently because he's slowly growing into the role. He's a guy that maybe rules just instilling a wee bit more confidence in, getting a few goals under his belt, and surely he's got to be the free kick taker from now on.
Yeah, I mean, if we start with that, that was unbelievable. I don't think you're going to see a better free kick than that at all this season. That was unbelievable. What a strike. I agree with you. That angle behind the goal it shows you that I know a lot of people always look at these things and go, oh, well, it was against Annan. It doesn't matter who was in goal the other night. That was hitting the top corner. No one had any chance. I think he's about 30 yards out. It's an ridiculous strike. And again, I love the moment for him because again, you could see how much it meant to him. That's someone that's been feeling the pressure. We referenced it a couple of weeks ago. That is a player that is really feeling it at the moment. And I think these goals are helping him in terms of confidence. Something I've said before. I think Danny Röhl really likes him. I do. I think it looks like he's identified Thelo Aasgaard as someone that definitely has the ability, but he's maybe going to have to help him build that kind of mental side. And I think he's been trying to build his confidence over the last few weeks, and he's been kind of bringing him in and out at times and trying to take the heat off him. And I think it's helped him. I do. I think he's starting to have more influence in the side. Still, I want to see a little bit more intensity from him, but we can't complain. I think is that 4 goals in the last 6, I think, from Thelo Aasgaard, and maybe 4 in the last 5. So that's a really good return from what you would consider an attacking midfielder. He's starting to deliver in those moments. So yeah, I'm really happy for him. I've been really critical of Thelo Aasgaard through this season, and I'm always happy for Rangers players to prove me wrong. Like, if I'm critical of them and they come out and they show how good they are, then I'm happy to hold my hands up and say that I've got it wrong. I'm maybe not quite there yet. I still think there's a little more to come from him, but I think he's certainly starting to get a lot more confidence. What I want to see next from Thelo Aasgaard, Kyle, is the ability to use his body, right? Because the physical stature's there. I think if he can realise how to use that physicality within Scotland, you will see a much better player, because he can roll, he can roll people. He can use his physicality in tight spaces to roll people and create chances for himself or others. That's the kind of next step I'm expecting. But yeah, I think he's starting to improve. We've seen a lot more from him in recent weeks. I do think the manager really likes him, and I expect him to see him in the side in the next few weeks as well. I think he'll keep his place. I think he'll come back in and he'll potentially start over the weekend. Obviously, we've got that European game first, but I do think that Dundee, that'll be a game that he'll play. So yeah, I'm really encouraged by him, and you're starting to see now why Rangers have maybe paid that 3.5 million, because I think at various points this season, a lot of people have looked at that and went, that's an inflated fee for what you're getting. I think he's starting to pay that back a little bit now. So yeah, really happy with him, encouraged.
Yeah, it's the type of goals he's scoring as well. They are real technical finishes. Like, you can obviously tell, like, that doesn't happen by accident, that free kick. He's obviously practiced that, thousands of times on a training ground to get that good, and that's exactly what you want from your players. But what I'm reading, well, firstly, what point number 1 is, you can tell where your focus is based on how many times you've mentioned this Dundee game already, and number 2 is, he just needs to get watching the old videos of Alfredo Morelos and how to use that backside in terms of rolling players. But the next point in the agenda, Ross, I want to come on to is there was many eyebrows raised when we saw that lineup. I think there was a lot of people even getting to Ibrox questioning why they'd gone after they'd seen that lineup come out. I'm just going to run through it very quickly. Kelly in goals, Magoma, Nsiala, Giga, Aarons, Dowell, Rothwell, Gassama, Danilo, Curtis, Miovski, Aasgaard, Chukwuani, Diomande, Lawson, who I thought was brilliant in his wee cameo appearance, Rabbi Matondo, Moore, Jamie Suter, and Kieran Wright. There's a lot of names there that I was still quite surprised are at the club still. How many of them would you happily see go, or how many of them do Rangers need to let go to bring more players in? Is it a necessity at this point?
I think it is. I think you're starting to see how inflated Rangers squad is, because think of the bench and how many people were missing from that bench on Friday night that you would consider first team players. So I do think they have to try and shift a few this window. It's going to be difficult. It always is. And I think I always laugh about this sometimes, because people are just like, you'll just get rid of him, just get rid of X, Y, and Z. It's very difficult, right? Because if you don't want him, you're hoping that someone else wants him, and players have contracts and they're well entitled to sit on it. So the likes of Rabbi Matondo, for example, he's got 6 months left in his deal, and I think we're all led to believe that he is on a pretty high wage. So I can't see Rabbi Matondo going this window. He obviously had a loan last year and it didn't work out for him. I expect him to just stay around the club, probably not get many minutes, and move on in the summer. The likes of Joe Rothwell and Kieran Dowell, I definitely expect to go, and I think the club should be prioritising those two, because I think there is interest there from the Championship, and if we can get any sort of feedback for these two, then I think we take it and we move them on. A big one that a lot of people keep talking about is Danilo, and I struggled to see where the interest would come for Danilo based on the fee we paid for him, probably the salary he's on. But if you just ask me from just looking at the squad in terms of the squad itself without any of the financials involved, I think Danilo would have to be one that the club would have to try and move on, because I just don't think he's going to make a big enough impact. And I don't think Danny Röhl really fancies him, because when he first came in, he gave him quite a few minutes. And then I think he quickly realised he's not got enough for him to play up front and to do enough in this league. So he's definitely one I would prioritise and moving on as well. The likes of Finlay Curtis, I actually thought he was really good the other night. Thought he done really well. Again, you've got to take it in the context who we're playing, but I thought he was good. And I think if Rangers can develop him properly, I think they're going to have a really top player in the future. So for me, the priority for this window should be for him to go out on loan, find him that loan move to try and help him. And then if you look through the rest, Max Aarons, I think will stick around, because I don't think Bournemouth will recall him, because it'll be very difficult to move him on again. Nasser Giga, the same. I think he'll just stay around. I don't think Wolves will be in any hurry to cancel that loan. And probably the other one is Clinton Nsiala, isn't it, Kyle? I think for him, I think he has to improve a lot defensively as a centre-back, but I thought in possession he was really good the other night. Some of his passing out from the back was brilliant. You know, he's splitting the lines, he was playing long balls in terms of diagonals in behind and things. So yeah, there's quite a lot within that team the other night. We were sitting in the stand the other night, and I think it reminded us how many players are still here that, as a support, we just don't think are good enough. And I think the club are probably in a similar position. They just don't think a lot of these players are good enough, and it's time to try and move them on. So yeah, there's certainly a few in there that I think we have to prioritise moving on, and it hopefully gives us a little bit more flexibility to bring others in. But yeah, it's going to be difficult. It's never easy in January to move these type of players on, and the likes of a Rabi Matondo, like I referenced there, and even a Kieran Dill, they're going to wait for the right opportunity, because they've only got 6 months left. So they're going to keep their options open, because they'll get a better deal at the end of it in the summer. So not easy, Kyle, but it's something we need to try and prioritise, is definitely moving some of these bodies on.
Yeah, listen, let us know in the comments what you think about the players that Ross has talked about there. Especially, I'm really interested to see what people think about Clinton Nsiala as well, because he's the one that seems to divide. I'm convinced there's a player in there. I just think he's got a very, very, very good pass out from the back. Okay, his defending is can be a bit suspect at times, but I think with an experienced centre half, he could be a better player. And the other one I would quite like to hear people's thoughts on in the comments is the two lone players that you referenced there, Nasser Giga and Max Aarons. I'll put my cards on the table. I would quite happily see the back of Nasser Giga, especially with Derek Cornelius. You know, I think he's coming back in the next few weeks, is my understanding of that. If the timeline that we were told initially in terms of his injuries is that we're still going by that timeline, I'll put that caveat in there for the lawyers, Ross. And the other one, Max Aarons, I can't make my mind. I was a bit surprised to see how many times he's actually played for us already this season. If we could go out and get a right back in this window, I would happily see the back of Max Aarons. But I don't, as you said, a striker's not a priority, a right back's not a priority at this moment in time where we have Tav and Aarons. But I'm sure while we're on this podcast, we're talking about priority areas for next year. Right back will definitely be one of those. But I don't see him being at the club. But listen, when we're on here, we love talking about transfer targets. We always try and talk about people who have got a bit of credibility behind them. But this one here has come from you guys who are talking about it, because we've had a few requests about him. He's all over the socials, and that is Tawanda Maswanhise. No, he's not a Rangers player at all. We know he plays for another team in the SPFL and Motherwell. We have already referenced it on this podcast. They are playing very well. He's got, I think, Ross, he's up to 10 goals in the league so far this year. Every time you turn the telly or you look through, Scottish football, his name just always seems to be there in terms of scoring. Is this a player, again, there's no concrete links, but is this a guy that you would like to see at Rangers? Can you understand why people are interested in seeing him? And do you think his style is suited to Rangers Football Club? Because let's face it, the Motherwell play the way that I believe Russell Martin played or wanted to play. Motherwell are playing much, much better football than Russell Martin ever produced. But is this the right type of profile to be bringing into the Rangers squad? Would you like to see Rangers going out and getting Maswanhise?
I think he's definitely a player that Rangers should be looking at. Absolutely. I think his return this season is really good. I think over the weekend, Motherwell were playing the Scottish Cup. I think he scored his 15th goal of the season, and he was away at AFCON. So there was a few weeks where he wasn't available for Motherwell. So 15 goals is a really good return. I think they took him from Leicester last year. I think he'd been released from Leicester. So a really good bit of recruitment from Motherwell to take a risk like that. I mean, we've done that with Calvin Bassey, so clearly there is a ability within that Leicester academy, and any clubs that have been in the Premier League for a while will have good academies, I suppose. But yeah, from what I've seen of him, he looks a really good player. That kind of right-sided forward, could play through the middle, predominantly plays on the right, but he's probably someone you could play across all the front three, and I don't think that would be a bad thing for us. I still think if Rangers could add one in a wide area, that would be good for us, because I do think we lack creativity out there at times, as well as in midfield. I think he's definitely a player that we should be looking at. I am a little bit sceptical because of the fee, and there obviously hasn't been any official link to Maswanhise, so I'm purely speculating here on what Motherwell would be looking for. But if you look at Kieran Bowie, who was linked last week with a move to Rangers, it was said that Hibs were looking for about 6.5 million for him. I think Maswanhise is a very similar age, and he's delivering at a higher rate within this league. And if you look at the likes of Miovski, who when he left Aberdeen, he left for about 7-8 million. I think Theo Bair as well left Motherwell with 6 months left in his deal, I believe, and he left for 1.5 million. So I think Motherwell are going to look for a good fee for Maswanhise. You're talking about at least 3 or 4 million, I think. And I'm just not sure if Rangers would go for that. Just seems like quite an inflated fee for anyone in this league at this point. But certainly looks a very, very good player, and definitely someone that could add something to our side. We clearly lack creativity and goals at times, and that's what he brings. And it doesn't automatically always translate that if you're scoring goals in the SPFL that you can go and do it for Rangers. It's never a guarantee. But I think a lot of people have seen that there is raw ability there, and someone that you could definitely work with. So I would be more than happy to see Rangers go in for this. I think if we've all read reports that Celtic are looking at him as well. So sometimes you're sceptical of these things when both clubs are linked with a player. You think, that's just the media stirring things up. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if both Old Firm clubs are looking at Maswanhise because of the return he's had over this year. 2.5 years left in his deal at Motherwell, so it's not going to be cheap. But yeah, like I said before, definitely one I'd be looking at if I was Rangers in that recruitment team.
Yeah, no, like I said, I can totally see where you're coming from, but this was a thing that always used to get levelled at Rangers whenever we had, bids for players. The one I'm thinking off the top of my head is Morelos, and it's like, well, see if you're demanding X fee, you need to be paying that player like. If you want to sell him for 10 million quid, you need to give him the wages of a 10 million pound player. I know we've not said it, maybe 2.5. I don't know if that's feasible, but I very much doubt Motherwell are paying him like a 2.5 million pound player. But yeah, if that's the going rate for him, then it'd be fascinating. I'm not entirely convinced he's the right type of profile. I think when Motherwell he'll get a lot more space than what he ever. But again, I suppose you could say that with virtually every player that comes to Rangers. So he would definitely have to adapt. But yeah, but really interesting one to keep an eye on, and it would be Ranger, the scouts wouldn't be doing their job if this guy wasn't on a list somewhere. But yeah, but that's one we've had a few people asking about him, and like I said, we want to discuss things and get involved in the community with you guys. So that's why we're talking about that one. But Ross, the next point here that I just want to come on to is the Ludogorets tie on Thursday in the Europa League. It's game 7 of 8. It all but looks like Rangers' European campaign is crashing down to the end because it has been rotten this season. It has been, bar the Champions League a couple of years ago, this has been one of the worst runs in Europe I can expect. What I can remember in such a long time. What are you expecting on Thursday? Are you expecting, quite a few changes in the squad, and you never want to say this as a Rangers fan, but is the silver linings is it, after, a week on Thursday, that's us. We likely don't have to worry about Europe anymore. We can just focus in the league.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said there. It's been an absolutely horrific European adventure for us this season. It's been really, really bad to watch. And I think this is where I don't enjoy the kind of extended period of it, because they've changed it now, where it used to be, it was always 6 games, wasn't it? And it finished up in December. Now we're into January and we're still playing in this league phase and we're out. So it's really difficult to actually motivate yourself for these games. I think in terms of what I'm expecting, I could see Rangers potentially coming in with a kind of first team again to try and continue that momentum that they've put together. But I certainly don't think they'll play the 90 minutes, for example. I think Danny Röhl will make a lot of rotation in there and he'll try and get as many players in to get some minutes as possible. Look, all Rangers can really do going into this is, like I said, they're trying to build momentum, trying to keep a run going. Rangers should always be looking to win a game at home against Ludogorets in the Europa League. You know, this is something that we should be doing. So might give us a little bit of a feel good about the Europa League if we can actually pick up a win, because like you said, it's been such a difficult year for us, such a difficult season, but I'm not expecting much. And I think it might be a little flat at Ibrox on Thursday as well, because the support are going there knowing that there isn't really a lot to play for, which is difficult to get yourself up for. So yeah, look, for me, if we can go there, if we can get a win, and then you made a joke about it earlier, I kept referencing Dundee. That is the most important thing for me at this point. I think every other Rangers supporter is the same at this point. My focus is on the league and trying to get Rangers back into a position or get to the top of the league and go for this title. For me, I'm looking at Dundee because there's excuse me, there's such an important game this weekend coming up between Celtic and Hearts at Tynecastle. For us, it's a really big opportunity to pick up 3 points and close the gap. So yeah, you can see where my head is on this, Kyle. I'm kind of wanting just Rangers to get through this game on Thursday, potentially pick up a win, maybe get a little bit of form out of some players, and then we kick on and we'll get back to league action.
That's exactly what you hope for from something like this. You just want us to come through unscathed, no injuries. If we get a win, a decent performance, you know, which you're hoping against the the level of opposition at Cluj. That in recent years you wouldn't have even batted an eyelid about this being a problem at Ibrox, but just you hope, the way things are going, you just want a routine win. I would take that all day long. But I said you're not sticking to the party line of one game at a time. I noticed that even the new signings that have come in are already giving it the listen. It's just one game at a time, which I already love. But listen, I think that just about wraps it up for this episode of Let's Talk Rangers. So thank you very much for tuning in and supporting the show as always. Just want to say about 80% of you guys watching haven't subscribed yet. So if you've enjoyed the content and want to be part of the Let's Talk Rangers community, make sure you hit subscribe, drop the video a like, and turn on those notifications so you never miss a show with Ross and myself. We're also available on all major audio platforms, so you can listen back to us whenever it suits you as well. As always, thank you to everybody who continues to watch, listen, and comment and help the Let's Talk Rangers community grow. As always, we really appreciate it. So thank you. Take care, and we'll see you all soon.